You know, sometimes in life we succeed in an endeavor because we do almost everything right. It could be we had good guidance and coaching from parents or role models, mentors. We had the talent, determination to stick to the path that they lay out for us, and the path is really solid. Or sometimes we have some or all of those things in life, but because of laziness or hard-headedness, we deviate from that solid path. We end up doing things the hard way or going back and having to relearn things, and we waste a lot of precious time. I'm speaking from experience here because although I've become a good guitarist over the course of my life, I've had a whole lot of lazy moments and a hell of a lot of hard-headed moments. And it's a combination of those two things that caused me to neglect some massively important concepts when I was learning guitar. And I had to go back and learn or relearn them. I got it done, but it took a lot of time, caused a lot of frustration, and I lost some opportunities because of it. I'm hoping through the benefit of my experience, I can help a few or maybe even a lot of you avoid my mistakes. We're going to talk about 5 areas of guitar playing that I regret not giving enough attention when I was learning, why in hindsight that they're so important, and some of the things that you can do with these concepts that I hope gets you all fired up and ready to move forward with your playing. Thanks for checking out the channel. Please like and subscribe. Oh, and I've got a couple of courses out now, including a new free course if you're just getting into lead guitar. The links are in the description below, so go check those out. And okay, let's play some guitar. It's really easy to let our egos get in the way. And that's certainly the case for me with these first 2 concepts I want to talk about. I started playing pretty young, and way before I was a teenager, I knew some fancy jazz chords and a few scales. And I thought I was above some of the things that my teacher wanted me to learn. And the first of these concepts that I regret neglecting is triads. Now I know how important they are and how silly I was to think that I was above learning them, especially when they're a huge part of the vocabulary of players that I admire so much, like Larry Carlton, Steve Lukather, or Andy Timmons. I can remember thinking as a 13-year-old kid, man, I want to learn these fancy chords. I'm not going to mess with those little 3-note things. And it wasn't until later on in my teens when shred guitar had become a thing that I got a big dose of reality. A buddy of mine played me this amazing etude, stringing triad shapes together all over the neck, and I tried it and I fell flat on my face. Now, I totally understood the theory. If you'd have given me an empty fretboard chart, I could have drawn the triad shapes all over the neck of the guitar. But playing them fluidly and being musical with them, I hadn't put in the work. Now here's something very important that you need to think about with all aspects of your playing. Having a little bit of information in your brain about something is not the same as knowing how to do that thing. And there really is so much you can do with triads, just in the country, pop, rock, and blues genres. They're so handy for rhythm work. If you're a fan of Jimi Hendrix, SRV, or the Johns, Mayer, and Frusciante, you need triads for that soulful rhythm work with all the little flurries and embellishments. They've got tremendous applications for lead guitar. They make it so easy to outline chords in a progression. For instance, take a progression: E major, B minor, F sharp minor, C sharp minor, and F sharp major. We could outline those chords with triads like this. And you can hear the chords as plain as the nose on your face. Now we can take a triad and make something out of it called a melodic cell by adding, say, the second interval to the 1, the 3, and the 5 that make up the triad. Here's an E major triad. If I add the second to it, I get this. Here's an E minor triad. If I add the second to it, I get this. Really useful little device. And when you start getting really into triads, you can find little nuggets like this. Over a complex chord like a D minor 7 flat 5, you can play a minor triad up a minor third, so that would give us F minor over D minor 7 flat 5, because basically D minor 7 flat 5 is an F minor chord with a D in the bass. I wish I'd learned earlier about something called triad pairs, and that's the idea of taking two different triads to get 6 notes of a particular mode or scale. For instance, we can play the E major and D major triads to get an E mixolydian sound. Or we could use F sharp major and E major to get a Lydian sound. And you can use triad pairs to make all the modes of the major scale and even some more exotic scales. How about spread triads, which are a big part of Eric Johnson's magical sound? I was so naive and foolish thinking I was above mastering triads. Wow, don't make my mistake. The second area we're going to cover, it's another easy one to overlook because we think it's not sophisticated enough, and that's pentatonic scales. Once again, I can hear my young brain saying, nah man, it's all about super Locrian and Hungarian minor. I don't need that 5-note stuff. And I hear things like that all the time from my students now. I tell them, and I wish I could go back and tell my younger self, man, you don't even sound good playing the pentatonic scale. Let's learn how to do all we can do with that scale and make it sound amazing, and then we can go off and learn something else. Start really getting into pentatonics by breaking out of the box patterns and learn to move up and down the neck horizontally 2 or 3 strings at a time, like this. Before long, you'll be covering the entire neck and connecting together ideas like this one. And once you get really good at playing major and minor pentatonics in the blues scale, start mixing them together like this. And you don't have to stop at major and minor pentatonic. There are other awesome 5-note scales, like the dominant pentatonic. There's exotic sounding scales like the Hirajoshi scale. And did you know you can substitute multiple minor pentatonic shapes over certain chords to get modal sounds while using your tried and true pentatonic patterns? Check out how E minor pentatonic sounds over this C major 7 chord. And here's B minor pentatonic over C major 7. Now I'm going to combine A minor pentatonic, B minor pentatonic, and E minor pentatonic. And we're going to get all the notes of the Lydian mode while being able to play familiar patterns and getting that airy, open sound that pentatonics have. Check this out. Looking back now, I'd really like to ask my younger self, dude, you thought this stuff wasn't worth your time? This is awesome stuff. Please, don't make my mistake. Regret number 3, and I'm going to give my teacher a little bit of blame here because of how he presented this to me, was how long I took to learn the modes of the major scale. Now, in my defense, I was about 13 when my teacher handed me a bunch of fretboard charts and said, here, memorize this stuff. There wasn't much explanation, and I remember being so overwhelmed that it just turned me off. I actually stopped taking lessons for a while after that, and I put up this wall where theory was concerned. Now, my ear was good enough that when I would learn some solos or try and improvise on my own, I could tell that I was changing some of the notes and the patterns that I played over certain chord progressions. But I really didn't give it much more thought than that. Once again, through the benefit of my experience and hindsight, I can show you how I think you should learn modes. And I wish I had been taught this way. The way I was initially taught, and I think it's a terrible way to think about the modes, is that you just take the major scale of a certain key. Let's start with C major. And if you play from C to C, that's C Ionian. If you play from D to D, that's D Dorian. If you play from E to E, that's E Phrygian, and so on. But my brain then and now kind of reacts to that by saying, well, big freaking deal. That doesn't really give me anything to latch on. No real understanding of what makes up a mode or why each one is different. All I know is they're starting on and ending on different notes each time. Here's how I think you should learn the modes. In a key, there are 7 modes in all, and we're going to call 3 of them major and 4 of them minor. And I think you should learn all of them from the root note, starting with learning the formula for the major scale or Ionian mode. Starting with the root note C, we go up a whole step to the second, which is D. We go up another whole step to the third, which is E. We go up a half step to the fourth, which is F. A whole step to the fifth, which is G. A whole step to the sixth, which is A. And a whole step to the major seventh, which is B. And then we've got a half step and we're back to our root. Now the next major mode is called Lydian mode, and it differs from the Ionian mode in that the 4th note of the mode is raised a half step. So instead of F, we have F sharp. And all the rest of the notes are the same. C Lydian mode sounds like this. And compared to Ionian, it sounds sort of dreamy and exotic. Now the 3rd and final major mode would be Mixolydian. And Mixolydian differs from the Ionian mode, and then we're going to take the 7th note and make it flat. So we've got a B flat now, and C Mixolydian sounds like this. And it sounds great over a dominant 7 chord, and you'll hear it everywhere in country, blues, and rock guitar. Now for the minor modes. C natural minor, or Aeolian mode, has the formula. And remember, when we look at these formulas, we're starting off with the major scale and altering tones. But we've got the root, 2nd, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, the flat 6th, the flat 7th, and then we're back to our root. The 2nd major mode we call Dorian, and to get that mode, we raise the 6th degree a half step. So Dorian sounds like this compared to natural minor. And it works especially great when you're playing a minor chord followed by a major chord a 4th above that minor chord, like C minor to F. Kind of a Santana thing. Now the next minor mode is called Phrygian, and we get this mode by going back to natural minor and flatting the 2nd degree. So we've got the 1, the root, the flat 2nd, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, flat 6th, flat 7th, and back to the root. And now while it's a minor mode, Phrygian really comes to life when you play it over 3 major chords. The major chord of the root, the flat 2nd, and the minor 3rd. It has that Spanish sound to it in that context. And lastly, we've got a mode called Locrian. And if we go back to Aeolian, we get Locrian by flatting the second and the fifth. So we've got root, flat second, minor third, fourth, flat fifth, flat sixth, flat seventh, and back to the root. Now that's a lot of flats, and this scale works over C minor 7 flat 5, or half diminished. And while it still takes time to learn those formulas, being presented with the structure of the major scale, and then learning that I only had to change a note or two to get all those different modes, well, that was huge for me. And being given sonic examples on top of the theory information to really drive home the sound of the modes, well, that really put it all together. So part of the blame falls on my first teacher for not presenting this stuff very well. But a big part of it is on me for not looking for other resources and having to go back and relearn all this stuff years later. Modes are such a part of not only lead guitar, but of songwriting and being able to come up with compositions with different moods. Please don't make my mistake with learning the modes of the major scale. The last two big guitar regrets I have are sort of related. And while the first three were more theory and technical based, the last two are more big picture oriented and have much more to do with being a well-rounded musician. Regret number 4 for me was practicing too much in isolation when I was learning. Now I realized times were different because I grew up in the dark ages. There weren't backing tracks to play along with, no computers with digital recording programs. But I didn't spend enough time even with a metronome in my first few years of playing. Consequently, when I did start getting into situations where I was playing with other people, my time feel was terrible. It took me a long time to get my groove together, and even longer to realize that there's a lot of different grooves that you've got to get a handle on. When I first started really working on time feel, I was obsessed with burying the click. And I got really good at being sort of machine-like from a timing standpoint. But that doesn't sound really good in every situation. Sometimes it sounds cool to lag behind the beat a little bit. Sometimes you got to push the beat. If you're soloing over a blues track with a New Orleans second line drum groove, you're going to play a whole lot differently than you would if you're playing a Van Halen cover. And one of the greatest things you can do to get your groove together is record yourself a lot. Record yourself playing some covers and compare how your playing feels from a timing perspective compared to the original artist. It can be really eye-opening. The last regret I have is waiting far too long in my development to start learning songs. I was such a little goof. I was obsessed with learning chord voicings and exercises. And I really neglected learning songs until many years after I'd started playing. I was that guy at the party when somebody would pull out a guitar and say, "Hey, Charlie plays guitar." And they'd hand me the guitar and I'd be like, "I got nothing unless you want to hear some jazz chords or a couple of etudes." Once I did start learning songs and started really studying what my favorite players were doing with just their rhythm parts and how they layered things, the different tones they use, I started learning some licks and tricks from famous solos. And it's like a whole new universe opened up. There is so much big picture information that you can learn beyond just the notes being played when you really dig into what a great player has laid down on a track. Learn from their experience, steal everything you can, and adapt and embellish it if possible. Now, it all worked out for me. I ended up learning a huge catalog of songs and became a lot more fun at parties. But most importantly, a lot better guitarist and musician. I hope this video gives you a few aha moments and maybe convinces you to put in the work on the good stuff up front so you don't have to unlearn and relearn a whole bunch of things later. Do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I wish you all the best with your playing. Work hard, have fun, never stop learning. Catch you next time.